when people buy the merch, they get a piece of feedback from a workshop.
Okay.
There was this one from Marley that was like, Marley, why are you gay? Those are the best ones too. The other great ones I love are, when did you decide to be a lesbian?
Yeah, that's good.
It's like, well, I just decided, you know. There's Jonas. What's up, buddy?
Tell us a bit about what you do, and then people know who to contact after the event. And
so I'm Lucah. I do marketing director for Get Real. I also run a marketing production company called Natural Element, and I'm a huge fan of marketing. I'm a huge fan of talking about inclusivity and diversity, like we do at Get Real. And my star sign is Taurus.
Ooh, okay. My husband's a Taurus too. Love that.
Hi, my name is Tiffany. I'm currently the content marketing manager for Touch Bistro. I also used to be on the board of an organization called Lesbians Who Tech, and I just joined the committee for the Venture Out Conference, which is an LGBT-focused tech conference, which I think it's amazing that we have something like that, and I feel so lucky to be a part of it. I really love storytelling. Before I was in tech, I was in book publishing, back when people used to read books. And so my heart really lies in storytelling, and I just love telling stories about people in terms of growing inclusivity, and we're also excited about how fast the Toronto tech community is growing, and I'm really excited to make sure that it's inclusive. And my star sign is, I'm on the cusp of Virgo and Libra, so I'm very complex.
Okay, I love that.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming out tonight. My name's James King. I work here at Uberflip. I am a partner account manager. So essentially that means I am a liaison between Uberflip and a handful of other businesses that can sell Uberflip on our behalf. Ultimately, I'm passionate about a lot of things, of course, including inclusivity, but also on top of that, some of maybe the odds and ends of my characteristics of being an Aries that is very passionate and dedicated and making sure that I go above and beyond, are the facts that I'm really into the likes of reality television, peanut butter, and also driving efficiencies. I'm relatively new to technology. I've been in this space for about 2 years now, but at the end of the day, I can always find happiness by figuring out how to solve problems in an Excel spreadsheet and making efficiencies happen.
Love it.
My name's Sept, I'm the CMO of Crescendo, and so we're a diversity inclusion education tool. We're a small team, 5 people, so I do pretty much everything like marketing, sales, and customer success. It's a lot, we were talking about that earlier. And then what I love to do, I love adventure, so it's broad, but it's like a canoe trip. Making a plan, going somewhere, or jumping into something with no plan, just like figuring it out along the way. So a startup. And then my star sign is Virgo. I found that out today as well.
Thanks everyone for being great sports on the star sign thing. I'm a Leo, and apparently I'm such a Leo. That's what people tell me. Okay, so the first question I'd like to ask, and feel free to chime in if you feel like this is good for you, and it's just, what are some small, simple things we can do at work or at school to show our support when it comes to like the LGBT community, and just like things that basically we could maybe start doing like tomorrow or next week?
So one thing that we do at Crescendo, it's back to like the root of avoiding making assumptions. So for example, if you're talking about someone's partner, rather than saying girlfriend or boyfriend, just say partner, or assuming someone's gender. And like we actively use pronouns at work to identify like he, him, she, her, or they, them. Just it helps normalize that behavior and just like makes it like part of the culture. So I think that's one easy thing.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing.
Sort of along the same lines of using the right pronouns is just making sure that even in everyday slang that we're making sure that we use the right words that we should be using. So ultimately, nothing's ever said with like the wrong type of intent. It's just a nice kind of reminder as well. And Slack has a new feature where if you don't want to make that public in the channel that you're talking about, you can just have it as a subtle notification that gets sent just to you as well. So that way you can have it in the back of your mind without having to know how government may face the issue.
That's amazing. I love it.
One of the things that I notice a lot is during meetings. You know, we've all been in a meeting where a couple people get a lot of time to speak, and oftentimes your influence at a company or whether or not you advance is very dependent on like how much speaking time you've gotten during meetings. So I was kind of thinking about this, and a lot of times when you grow up queer, you're kind of told throughout your life that what you have to say should not be said, and you're kind of told a lot that you should remain silent. So a lot of queer people kind of have had this experience throughout their lives where we get kind of these micro messages all the time that we should not speak. So I think it's kind of an important thing to just maybe realize how much you are speaking during meetings and maybe passing the baton to somebody who has had a queer experience and may not feel comfortable taking initiative to speak themselves because of kind of their lived experience. So just being cognizant of that, I would say, is a really good small thing that you can do to be a good ally.
Oh, that's amazing. Love that.
Yeah, no, great. I think too, for me when it comes to, especially things that we can do immediately as people, whether it's the workplace, school, anything like that, is, you know, be kind of question ourselves and the things that we're doing that play into either gender stereotypes or sexuality stereotypes or any of those things, because, you know, I remember I was working at Apple at the time. That was one of the bigger, longer term jobs that I had, and they definitely prided themselves on being very LGBT inclusive, and there was a lot of queer people that worked there, and a lot of straight people that worked there as well, who would say that they were pro-LGBT and all these things. But then you would hear people say things like, you know, I have no problem with LGBT, but I would never do that myself. Or those types of comments, or like, it's cool that you're gay, but like, I'm definitely not gay, I just want you to know that I am not gay. And I think that in the workplace, breaking down more of those barriers between straight and gay, and where can we align that isn't even about sexuality or gender, and asking, you know, us going inside our own selves on an individual level and saying, how am I contributing to this? How am I playing into this separation by not doing XYZ, or not wanting to admit that I was at the Britney Spears concert because people at my office might think I'm gay. Because I think the more we do that just as people, we will hopefully get to a better place.
That's amazing. Great. I learned so much just from that. Okay, so the next question is, you know, I think another thing when we come back to, you know, doing those small things is great, but I'm sure a lot of people here are curious to know if there's like programs or resources or initiatives that are going on currently in Toronto and that you know about that you can share some insight on. So like Venture Out and things like that, just so people can, and Get Real and all those places, so people can have an idea of like when it's time to plan something and get it executed, like where do we begin, what are some places that are doing great things that can like help guide us in the right direction.
So yes, Venture Out.
Yeah.
Venture Out, an LGBT tech conference. It happens, I'm officially announcing it, April 11th and 12th, 2019.
Yeah.
So plenty of time to plan. We are accepting a lot of sponsorship. So it would be amazing if, and very helpful if you kind of went to your company and said, please sponsor Venture Out. Last year, just to give you an idea of scale, we had over 600 people attend the conference last year, which was incredible. And this year we're really focused on making sure that we are reaching engineers and developers, because one of the things that one of the initiatives that we're really taking on is we want to make sure that there are LGBT people in Toronto who are contributing and who are responsible for designing product, because that's what's really important. So of course it's super important to have diversity in all areas of a company, but we believe that it's super important to have LGBT people involved in actually designing product, and that's really going to take us to the next level just as a society, making sure that things like chatbots and things like that just are designed with diversity in mind, because sometimes if diversity in the team is not included, then you get a product that is just homogenous and only for a certain subset of people. So Venture Out is really trying to correct for that, and we're also, this year is really exciting because we don't just have the conference in April, but we also have mini events leading up to the conference this year. So we're having a separate, we found that the job fair at the conference was so big and so in demand that we are actually having a separate job fair sometime in January. We're still working out the dates. And we're keeping the ticket price for all of these things very cheap so that people can access it. So it's something like $50 to attend, which for a conference is very inexpensive. So it would be great if more and more companies sent their staff to Venture Out, including allies, because we have a lot of programs for allies as well.
Amazing. Got it.
I'm just going to say one quick thing on Venture Out as well. We've been involved, I guess, in different capacities over the last 2 years. I remember 2 years ago, Julie, you can maybe even add a little bit more too, we had just found out about the conference maybe a few weeks before it had happened, and yet we still were able to really get in at the ground level, not only from like an attendee perspective, but also as a delegate at the event, have our thoughts and opportunities for the event shared with the executive committee. And the next year when we came on board into their sponsorship level, it was really great to actually see all those different tidbits that we had provided as delegates were automatically applied. So it's really great, and I just want to commend everything Venture Out has done in terms of making sure that they're taking in that feedback, really listening to the issues that matter and bringing them to the table. So again, also on the notion of the coding element, I remember I think maybe a couple weeks before Venture last year there was like an incubator conference right before then, and I remember seeing a lot of great activity about that on social and like a lot of drive to like make a lot of that happen again. So kudos.
So one is a smaller organization just getting started. It's a meetup group called Bridge Builders, and so amazing woman started it, and pretty much the objective is to help people have difficult conversations in the workplace about racism and sexism. So these are really challenging conversations to have, and especially when you're in a workplace context. If that's the first time you're having that type of conversation, there's so much opportunity for emotions to blow up, for mistakes to be made, and it's just really hard. So creating a space where you can practice that safely and learn about how to have these types of challenging conversations is so important. So check it out, bridgebuilders.xyz. They host regular, like monthly meetups. And then also, this is more for men, but it's called Next Gen Men. It's an organization started by actually a former like semi-pro basketball player. It's in Calgary, Toronto, and they have one more, but pretty much the setting is dedicated for men to have conversations that men normally don't have. So there's a lot of like breaking down toxic masculinity, understanding like what contributes to that, why is this happening, how can we make a difference in our own small community. So those are two like smaller meetup groups that I would highly recommend checking out if you're looking for programs in Toronto.
Amazing.
I guess talk about Get Real for a second as well. In this, I think that so Get Real, we're a nonprofit organization, speak in middle schools, high schools, universities across the country. We also do corporate and other business experiences, but we're mainly about building bridges, team building, and creating allies by talking about LGBT community. I think one of the things that I like most, I mean, even today I was just speaking to 8, classes of grade 8s, which is its own experience, but the stuff that we do for within companies, within teams, the benefit we've seen has been really amazing in terms of what it means to share stories between staff and also recognize that everyone is dealing with something on some level, and how we can find ways to help support each other regardless of being LGBT or not, even if it has that focus. So that's kind of Get Real's main push right now.
Amazing. I love that. It's great. Okay, so the next one, we talked a bit about allyship and what it means to be an ally. So I'd love to hear everyone's perspective on what are some ways that everyone can be allies at work and just on the regular in the community. And I think my favorite example is this. I was talking to James about this earlier, is when we were at Venture Out and we had the job fair in the booth and people were coming up and chatting to us. And I'm very passionate, you can tell that I'm into it. And I'm wearing all rainbows and glitter, and I'm so excited. And I was talking to someone who came up, we were talking about Pride, and we started talking about the parade, and I'm I never go to the parade, I take part in Pride for a whole month, and then I just never end up at the parade. And he's well, the parade isn't for us, it's for straight people. And I was oh, okay. But he just assumed there was no possible way I could be straight if I was this into being an ally and talk about inclusivity. So it's just there is somewhat of a stigma around being a straight person who is just really passionate about being an ally and spreading that vibe. So I'm interested to hear both sides, and if you have feedback on allyship in any sense of the word.
If you the place to start is about don't be afraid to be wrong or make mistakes. No one is perfect. This is how I've heard it described multiple times. Allyship is a journey. It's not a badge. It's not a point of pride that you can just you don't go around and do that. But the idea is that it's a journey and we learn along it. So you need to be okay with being wrong or making mistakes and asking for feedback. So I think one of the biggest, most important things that you can do to try and be a better ally is openly express the fact that you want to learn. Because people are going to go into the assumption that maybe they don't want to call you out because it might be kind of awkward and it's a weird social situation, something like that. So, but if you go and express to say, hey, I would like feedback, please, how did I do there? Would you recommend changes? That is one way that you can show that you care and you want to learn. So ask for feedback and be open to it.
I love that.
And definitely take the time to kind of understand just basic principles of intersectionality, I would say. We were kind of talking about this, I think we were talking about this, but it's kind of interesting to be placed under the umbrella of LGBT. Because my experience as a white, cisgendered, queer woman is not the same as a trans person of color. And so it's very interesting, sometimes without even meaning to, you are expected to speak for all of LGBT when actually you belong to a very small slice of that pie, and your experience is very unique. And so I think that kind of the primary thing that people can do to be good allies is just to really understand the complexity and understand just the difference between the L, the G, the B, the T, and really kind of keep that in the back of your mind when you're talking to an LGBT person, I would say.
Yeah, I think to jump on that as well, once you understand those basic fundamentals, there's nothing wrong with being inquisitive and wanting to learn a bit more, and to your point, not being afraid to trip over your words or accidentally say the wrong thing, because it's all about where your heart is coming from, and that you're actually trying to get the right point across. Also, having a lot of your, it's a little cliche, but your actions do speak louder than your words, and when there's opportunities like events like this, and you have the opportunity to go in and support your coworkers and coming in it with an open mind and looking to learn a little bit more and looking to improve upon yourself each and every day and take that extra next step. It's, I don't know, as a, again, sort of like as a white gay man, I have taken the point of appreciating the fact that there are people out there that want to learn more and they're taking the right steps to do so. So I'm always down for people to take that step in the right direction.
Love that.
Yeah, you know, the pride thing is interesting, right? Because when it comes to being an ally, I think pride is a great opportunity to do that. You know, we have such an incredible Pride Parade or Pride Month, June. There's so much to do. There's so much great stuff. You know, I've been going to Pride for years, up and down experiences depending on where you're at in your life. But you know, it's been, for me, it's definitely been getting better. And you know, I think that it's one of those times, especially last year, I realized, you know, my main business partner, he identifies as straight, and I remember I said this last year, I said, you know, you should, do you want to come to Pride, basically? And his first reaction was, am I allowed? And for me, I was thinking, well, yeah, part of me definitely thought, but that's a valid question, because I know that people have concerns about that. But I have this interesting relationship with it where, you know, because of my transition, when I'm at Pride, I'm seen as straight. And over the years, I've gone, and not that I'm not straight, I mean, to equate those two, a whole other conversation, but I'm seen as someone who, let's say, shouldn't be there. And so when I started going, you know, as a female body person, my experience at Pride was very accepting, and you know, now that I'm read as male all the time, it's not so much that way. And so for me, having him there was really important, because to me that was some of the best allyship that I had ever seen. You know, he was out there with me, definitely a little bit hesitant at the beginning, he had never experienced it before, but we just had the best time, you know, dancing and hanging out, and his reaction leaving was, he goes, I think more people would go to Pride if they knew what it was like. And that's exactly what I think too, because so many people who are straight identified, or maybe they're not even straight identified, but they've never been exposed to anything LGBT, think, well, that's for LGBT people. Like, I'm not gay, so what would I do at Pride? Maybe if I go, people will think I'm gay. And back to my earlier point, like, unlearning those thoughts is really what's going to have I think a deeper effect. So yeah, absolutely. Like, if you're covered in rainbows, people might think you're gay, but you know, you don't need to be, and you don't need to be to go to Pride either. I mean, it's if you're there with people that you love, that's what's up.
Love that. Great perspective from everyone. Yeah, tell me. You have something else to add? No. Add it. No, you want to go? Oh, you want to go?
Oh, I think
you should all go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's very interesting. It's like when you go to cruise and tangos, okay?
Tell us more.
And there's, like, this is always what I think of. It's like when you go to cruise and tangos, you're there to see some drag queens, it's your safe queer space, and then there's a bachelorette party, and they take over the space. And I always have very conflicting feelings about that, because obviously we want to be an inclusive space. I am so happy that straight people feel welcome in that space, and I just overall want it to be a welcoming space. However, what ends up happening is a lot of times the bachelorette party just takes over the entire night. So in terms of allyship, like, it's really finding that balance and being aware of the kind of space that you're taking up. You're totally welcome to come, and we want allies there. I am a full believer of that. It's just being present in the moment and really being aware of your surroundings and understanding if you are just present in the space as an ally and supporting, or are you taking over the space as somebody with privilege? So it's just understanding that balance, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great point too.
It came to mind that one thing that I wanted to mention, like hopping off the last point about privilege and understanding privilege, is I think one of the most effective and easy ways you can understand your own privilege, Google the word in images, privilege wheel, and just look at that. There's 2-ring circle. on the inside is like highly privileged pieces of your identity, on the outside is less privileged. And like that was really eye-opening for myself, looking at it and being like, oh, like I am everything except one of the inside. And just like being like, oh crap, like this is like a real thing and I need to be conscious of this. And like there's some really good videos online that talk about privilege, and it's, I think a really important point to make is that by being privileged, you are not automatically made a bad person. You are not negative or being like anti something because you're privileged, but the fact that you're privileged just means you have not had to deal with certain challenges that other people have had to because of your identity. Like for example, in the States, some states you can be fired for being gay. Like that's something that I've never had to deal with because I'm a straight man. And so there's just like these things, understanding privilege and just knowing that like by being privileged you are not a bad person, but you just need to be conscious of the fact that you have had those privileges and just be mindful of other people and kind of like just be a better person, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and for me I find with the word privilege too, like it also doesn't mean that your life is easy. You know, because that's another thing that people think. They're like, oh, people say I'm privileged, but they don't understand, like, I've had all this stuff happen to me. And, you know, I think it's because we think of the word privilege as always positive, but it's not necessarily always positive. It's just, at least the way I look at it is it's, you know, just as you said, it's something that you might have had to not deal with or think about in your life. And that doesn't mean you're not dealing and thinking about other stuff. And it's also, you know, not having to be in a world where when you have certain types of privileges where you're not having to fight against people's impressions of you. And that's something that I've definitely experienced. Like I would say, when I came out as trans, I think people thought that my life was going to be really shitty. And in fact, like I'm totally invisible from an LGBT perspective, and now that I'm a man, I am also invisible in its own way from being male and from looking the way I do and everything. So I've actually gained a ton of what most people would call privilege, because I'm not having to interact in the world in a way that I definitely felt I struggled with before. So.
That's amazing. So many great insights, and I totally agree with, and like I love what you said about like taking your coworker, and it seems crazy, a lot of us are around this all the time and we think like, of course you're allowed to come to Pride, or that's just the way we as Torontonians think of it, and you don't realize that, you know, a lot of people are kind of thinking that in the back of their mind, but they don't know how to express that to you. So even when we went to the Pride on the Boat cruise, you know, in my mind I'm like, okay, it's gonna be like straight white girls and like a couple gay guys from the office, which like that's a win. And then when we slowly started chatting to people about it, and we're like, everyone can come, like you don't, like, you know, it doesn't matter like your gender, like, you know, your sexual orientation, anything. And we started getting those like straight males and people like, you know, who had never been to anything Pride related, and they came, and I'm just like, this is like life. Like I was so happy, it was such a huge win. And like as allies, these are the things that we need to get people involved in, and we need to like, you know, almost handhold them and say like, this is okay, we all do this together, this is how we show our support. And like we're lucky to live in a place like Canada and Toronto where there are so many programs and like ways to get people involved. But yeah, those are all such good points. Love it. Okay, so my last question, and then we can ask if anyone has questions, is if anyone has any tips or advice on how to get buy-in from like executives or founders when it comes to like inclusivity initiatives or anything that you want to start like implementing in the workplace. And I'm sure James will talk to this quickly, but my answer to this was like, act now and ask for forgiveness later. Like, we're doing it. Like let's just see how it goes. And thankfully the founders of Uberflip have been like so supportive of all these amazing things that we've done, and that was kind of just like the road that we took, and I'm really lucky that we're in that position, but I know a lot of people aren't. So I'm just curious if anyone has any like scope on that.
Yeah, I'll just add on to the rest of the Uberflip perspective before we move on. And exactly to your point, where it's an element where when you're starting from the ground up, you are going to have to be a little bit more bold and a bit more direct in terms of making change happen. It's not that your leaders around you are against what you're doing, it's just more necessarily might not know the right steps to take to help you in the right way. So that's where most often like that initiative, and often like just quite, they're often maybe even just relieved that there are people within their organization that are able to do that. So ultimately, again, being able to drive forward, like what we did, we had a coffee like within our first month of being here, because we started roughly around the same time, and just sort of saw a gap, quickly crafted a quick plan. This is the benefit, I guess, being in a startup world. Things move a mile a minute, and within a couple of weeks, like we had a full-fledged plan of all the different initiatives that we wanted to do in the next coming weeks, months, and even out to a year. So yeah, just kind of like hit the ground running at first, and I think you said it perfectly, Julie. Like, do first, ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in this from like a brand perspective. I think we're quite lucky in that now we have brands to point to and say, look at what these brands have done. They've been viewed as their inclusion of LGBT people has been viewed as a net positive. So you always want to talk to leaders in terms of possible revenue numbers and brand lift. So that's how I would approach it. You can also take the opposite approach and kind of describe how behind they would be if they did not participate in diversity and inclusion programs. But I always like to go the positive route. So I just think that pointing to brands that have really gotten it right and that have really seen positive brand lift, and just giving some concrete examples is a really, really big help. I think it's kind of interesting that oftentimes we don't make decisions based on facts and numbers. We make decisions based on emotion. So if you can kind of, it would be great if you could say like, okay, these are the facts and figures about LGBT inclusion. That would be wonderful. But sometimes you do just need to appeal to emotion to affect change. So I would say that's kind of a good way to go.
I love that.
This is something that I work with on a daily basis, being a diversity inclusion related software company. Understanding what executives want is challenging, and everyone is different. I think that's one big piece. Like, there's so many different avenues and benefits of having a diverse and inclusive culture. It's figuring out what do your executives care about. What do your executives care about, and how are you going to best position that to them? So, like, from a talent perspective, you can look at it from the perspective of, hey, we're building a product that is being used by a diverse range of customers. So if we don't have diverse ranges of experiences on our team building that product, they're not going to be able to build a product for those people. Like, very simply, like, we need to hire diverse people so that they have those perspectives on the team. That's one way. Another way, like what you're talking about with the branding, like if you're a consumer-facing good and your consumer base is extremely diverse, whether it's sexual orientation, gender, race, ethnicity, like all of these things are going to have an impact on the marketing that you're putting out. And so if you don't have diverse perspectives on that team, you're not going to have diverse marketing. And I think a big thing that I've found in my work that's extremely important is focusing on the positive side. So when you go in, what I found is, like, with our value proposition, we kind of started off like, hey, if you don't do this, there's a lot of problems that could happen. You need to be aware of this. This is a problem. Like, when we framed it in that way, executives actually felt blame or shame. Like, when they were talking about it internally and like talking about like what we need to do, they would, rather than be open-minded to it, they would feel like we're not bad people, so we're good actually. Like, we don't have this problem, and they would get defensive about it. Whereas when you position it in a positive light, like, hey, here are the opportunities, like the extra revenue you can get. It's like financially proven. You look at McKinsey and their study, and there's millions of studies out there. There's actually, highly recommend, if you're struggling with this and need to sell it, look up Michelle Kim on LinkedIn. She's the founder of Awaken, their diversity inclusion consulting, and they've got a list of resources and data points about how to make the business case to your executives. So there's literally a pile of resources there. You don't need to do all the research, it's already done for you. Look there. But point being is you can back it up with both numbers and the positive spin of things. And I think that, in my experience, has been the best way to approach selling into the executive team.
That's amazing. Yeah, I totally, I agree with you there on the positive spin. I think like our messaging to our execs and the community was like, hey, like, you know, we were lucky that we were in a position that something negative didn't happen at work and we're like, oh shit, we need to bring someone in, like we need to talk about this, and that does happen very often. So we were in a space where it was just like, it's a conversation we're not having, we should be having. This is like a great thing that we can, you know, get behind, and we're, you know, lucky to be in the position that it was just like, let's make it happen, and there wasn't necessarily like a aha moment, whereas I feel like that does happen often too. But yeah, like I love the point about like the positive spin, and it's just like, hey, these companies are all doing it, these brands that maybe even like bigger or even way smaller than us and have been around for less time are already doing it, like why aren't we doing it? Just like, you know, it's like saying like we don't need Instagram or Twitter or like any sort of marketing or advertising. It's just like it can be like looking at it like the same light. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean those are all great. I think if there was anything to add, I would say that you know, even if your organization is already very LGBT positive and focused, diversity inclusion, just to make it something consistent. You know, it's that it should go on a regular basis. As I said before, I had worked at Apple. They prided themselves a lot on their LGBT, at least talent acquisition, which was 100% true. Although that wasn't always seen on the floor for me. You know, yes, there were a lot of LGBT people there, but that didn't mean there wasn't racism, bullying, sexism, transphobia going on. So I think that it's important to always continue the conversations at every level, and just try to build a more positive environment, stamp out the negative aspects of sometimes office culture whenever possible.
Yeah, for sure, and I totally agree with you there on the conversation. I think a lot of companies are like, you know, let's get going on inclusivity, like it's Pride, we're changing our Twitter logo to like a rainbow, and then next June we'll do that again, and now we're inclusive, and it's just like, yeah, that's a great thing to do, and like I love that we're seeing that support. But yeah, having the continuing conversations, being part of these like conferences and like these different like meetups and all this stuff, and it's like this conversation goes around all year and it never stops. Like people can always be better, and like thankfully we have people like you and like all these people in the community that can like keep that going.
One thing I wanted to add, there's stuff you can do to start that is free. So if they're complaining about the business case, you're like, okay, well, like, can I do this? I'm trying to think of an example, like changing pronouns, or being like, hey, I'm gonna start actively saying what my pronoun is. Like, you don't have to pay any money for that, but it can make an impact. Or doing, I'm trying to, like, I've got a list of things you can do that are small, like even printing off, I think you did it here, positive space.
Yeah.
Like, you can print off a positive space thing on a piece of paper, put it on the wall. It costs you a sheet of paper, but it's like a small step, and then you can gradually like pull out more budget from those executives once you show like, hey, we did these things, and people, here's testimonials from people that said like, I feel more included in this workplace now. Like, go and do that research. Like, it's like in any sales process or whatever, do small experiments that don't cost anything, show the results of those experiments, and then get more money to do bigger experiments. Like, that's how I approach it.
And also just like go rogue and just like refer, like start referring queer people to jobs.
Yeah.
Like just start sending and tell other people to do it at work too. That's totally free. And if your company has a referral program, you might even make money doing it. So that's something that you can do. I always appreciate it when I know that another queer person has been hired. I want to be their friend, and I always appreciate it when I see other queer people working where I work. And so if you just refer queer people to your company, that is one thing that costs leadership nothing.
That's a great point.
And very often you have a lot more built-in support than you may initially think. I remember when we did that safe space exercise, we framed it around a lunch and learn where it was totally optional, anyone could come by if they wanted to join. We had almost like over half the company join, to the point where we needed to bring in like more tables and chairs, and we were like, okay. So like, I guess in a way, like those going rogue and those initial actions can give you those numbers that you can use to build up the business case down the road.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point too.